Welcome to
Welcome to Percolating Thoughts. Okay. So, kind of like not to be a Debbie Downer, but Belle and I are actually going to talk about grief. Um, I honestly feel like we both have had our fair share, and Belle's recent passing of her grandmother, I feel like this is definitely a timely topic for us. Um, and then if,
and
yeah, go ahead.
I'm gonna say if any of so this is just a trigger warning. And if you feel any way while listening to this episode, remember that 988 is the suicide hotline. You don't have to be suicidal to call them either. Just if you have any thoughts of impending doom or you're struggling, or if you don't feel like you're in a safe environment to call, you can text home to 741-741.
Yeah. Um, but we just kind of wanted to hop on here and share with you our experiences of grief and how we've been like handling ourselves and recommendations we might have and how I guess to address certain circumstances. Um, so Belle, I think one of the most important things to do when you've experienced the loss of a loved one is to take care of yourself and make sure that you're um, not, going out or straying from like a routine. Um, I know one of the biggest feelings that I had when my mom passed away, which her death anniversary is coming up on December 17th. So, whoo, 2 years. But
So
one thing that I experienced was like my world stopped. So I don't know if you've had any similar experiences, but how did you take care of yourself in moments like that?
I don't know. I think I'm still learning. Um, but I think a lot of it, I instead of just being intentional about it, was this has to get done because or like I can't fall to the wayside because it happened towards the end of the semester. Like I have to get this stuff done. And as long as I do what I need to do, then that is what matters, whether that's school wise or work wise. Was like if you can't be good about taking care of yourself, as long as you're taking care of what needs to be taken care of, like it's easy to use a passing and grief as an excuse to not do an assignment or to not show up to work. But it's important to do that because it's part of like Leah was saying, that routine of this has to get done because you're going to feel worse if you don't do it in the long run. And if you hold off on it, I'm very fortunate that I completed most of my assignments before they were even due and before my grandmother passed. So when I came back from break, there was only really like one test I had to take. And so I lucked out in that, but it was still like showing up and making sure I went to class, I went to the meetings I needed to go to, I showed up for work. Even when like I was like, I'd rather just rot than and call in.
Yeah, and another thing to note is too, people grieve in different ways. I feel like that's a big topic to bring up too, because you stopping and like laying in bed and rotting is your way, like it could be someone else's way of grieving, as opposed to someone who gets up and goes. But I will say, literally, I will say, like, it is important, like, on that note, it is important to recognize what your body needs and um take heed in that as well. So don't be like stay like I said, stay in your routine. Don't be overly, exerting yourself in things to get your mind off of things, but also don't be like not doing anything. And also if you need help, reach out. Um I took three different types of counseling after my mom passed away. And after my mom passed, I didn't think that I needed counseling. Um, and I was like, no, 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 I'm fine. I'll just stick to the antidepressants. Like, we're chilling. And then I got to counseling, and then I realized, oh my gosh,
Mhm.
this actually does help having to talk to someone about, what I miss most,
Mhm.
about my mom and things I could do to cope.
Yeah.
Um, and someone who would just like listen. So that's always an option as well. And don't think that, it don't ever be embarrassed to ask for help. Um, and I mean, yeah, people grieve differently. So
Yeah.
just take your time in doing that. I guess the point I'm trying to make is like you're gonna have regrets, and you're gonna like think about everything that went down. Oh, I wish I would have like sent them one last text. Oh, I wish, I could have told them I love you and one more time if I would have only known. But yeah.
I
Um,
think I think in like what you're saying too is I think I turned to just like being with friends. And I
yeah.
think that's also important because I'm very fortunate that my friends they didn't talk about it unless I brought it up,
Hmm.
unless I decided to trauma dump. But and it's very much like if you bring it up, we'll talk about it. But if you don't bring it up, then we're gonna not talk about it. And I think that it's so important to surround yourself with people like that because you're already thinking about it so much while you're at home that like yes, you should take care of yourself, but I'm bad at that anyways. So being out of the house, going to do things, finding ways to I not distract yourself, but to get yourself out of that mindset. Because unfortunately, you are the person you have to go home to. And if you could just have an hour of just like going to get ice cream with a friend, um, that can make it so much easier because you're doing something that in the long run is good for you. Um, and I really didn't think that I was ever going to genuinely laugh again. And I came back um, from break, and I feel like that's all I did with my friends is they were the funniest people I'd ever met in that time period. And I think that is really helpful. It doesn't fix things, but it does help you recognize that there is some sort of normalcy after grief or trauma or whatever. Um, and like Leah said, you do have regrets. I have regrets that I didn't send my grandmother my senior pictures the day that I got them. Or I feel like it hurts my heart to know that my mom was on the way to see her when she got the call, and my mom had been gone for 2 weeks in Tanzania. Um, and I regret not calling more often. Um, so I think, or updating more often. And I think that you, um, and I think that I'll always look at traveling different now too. If I choose to do a 2 week trip, I will forever think about what if something happens while I'm gone. And I had already thought about that. That's why I didn't study abroad over the summer last year. Because all I could think about was I wouldn't have access to coming back if something happened. So I think like, well, yes, you should still live your life. I think it's also recognizing that those regrets and there is trauma and grief, even if they were not a traumatic person, there's trauma in thinking about all of the what ifs. Um, and so Leah's better at journaling than I am. But I would say in those moments, like write down those what ifs. It's better to have them out in the universe than it is to keep running it back over in your head. And at the end of the day, um, remembering that they knew that you loved them.
Hmm.
Um, and that you should never feel like there was ever a doubt in your mind that they didn't think that or they didn't know that. And your grief journey is always going to be your own. So also like not comparing how you think other people are taking what happened to your own reaction.
Yes. One thing I will add to that is I feel like, I mean, getting a little more personal into my specific situation is my mom, like no one in my family realized how much um of the glue my mom was to our family. And
Mhm.
so when she passed, everybody just kind of like went their different ways. And I mean, we still see and talk to each other. Um, and people, going back to people grieving differently, no one person's grief is greater than another's. And what I mean by that is when someone loses a family member, um, you're not the only person who lost someone.
Mhm.
So, I wasn't the only person who lost my mom. My aunt lost her sister. My grandparents lost their daughter. But when someone takes their grief and says their grief is greater than yours, and that, they loved that person more than you did, and they were closer to that person than you were, or whatever, that's not healthy. And I just want anybody listening to know that no one's grief is greater than yours. Everybody's grieving. Everybody is going through something. Everybody is handling it in their own ways. That being said, the way you should handle your grief needs to be there are healthy ways to cope and there are unhealthy ways to cope. And if someone and if someone comes up to you and says that your coping is unhealthy and you need to, probably think of other alternatives, then please like heed those instructions, but also like don't let your grief influence the way that you're treating others. Um or yeah,
Self-sabotage.
don't self-sabotage. T.
If you could describe three things that you learned from your relationship with your mom, what would you say those top three things would be?
I'm noticing more and more, like as I'm getting older, my laugh is starting to sound like hers. And I would say that is one of the biggest things that I miss because she had such this like vibrant, um, I guess this laugh that would vibrate through all the rooms and like make everybody happy. And you couldn't help but laugh yourself because it was like, why are you laughing so hard or whatever? It was great. And then another thing I would say is my love for coffee. That woman, she would cheers to Mischelle. That woman would always have freaking black coffee in her hand, no matter the time of day. And then I would say a third thing um is my um in terms of my personality, probably the way that I like mother people,
Mhm.
like not necessarily a mother hen, but it's like, hey, I'm there for you. Like I'll be
Yeah,
there. I'll listen. I'll help take care of you if you need help, that sort of thing. And that's the kind of person that she was. She was like everybody's mom,
yeah,
um, biologically or unbiologically. So, um, that's kind of my three things.
yeah.
Um, when it comes to your grandmother, what I'm gonna ask sort of a different question, but
Yeah.
in a similar regard. what are three things that um she has done that has influenced your lifestyle today?
So my final paper for one of my classes, I had written up um, a whole different 4-page paper. And when grandmother passed, I just had this feeling that I needed to delete it and I needed to write about her. And in that paper, and what I would say is one way that she's influenced me in the person that she was in her feminism. And that's what the basis of the paper was she, and I think this um, is how my politics are influenced and how I treat other people is influenced, is because she was a Republican her entire life, up until 2016. And she never let that define her.
Mm-hmm.
She taught me that feminism is very encompassing and that Republican women can be feminist, and that just because you align with a group or an ideal or an idea, um, that maybe has some really bad eggs in there, that it's not reflective of the kind of people that you interact with every day. And I think that has influenced my feminism and how I interact with other people who I know might align differently than I do, politically, by just like, I will stick up for a different party in any instance because of her, or for women who choose to follow certain groups or political affiliations or whatever, because she taught me how to do that. Like, and I spent half my life in Georgia. And I think that, and whenever my family chooses to speak down on women that aren't aligned with how they view the world, I'm always the first one to speak up. And even in this class was, feminism is not just for women in minority communities or women who are liberal or women who are very on one end of the spectrum or the other, um, or women who are cisgender, that it is for all of us. And if we say all of us, then it has to be all of us. And so I think that she taught me that by the way that she lived her life, um, in being a feminist, although she might not have used that word. That's exactly what she was. And I think also she influenced the way that I see, um, the way that she was independent. Um, Now some of my friends might say that it's negatively impacted me, but I think that it's positively impacted me to not need somebody else's validation in what I choose to do. So if that's taking a spontaneous trip out to Memphis to see my friends, I'm not going to let somebody hold me back because they're like, "Oh, but I wanted to go out tonight." I don't really care, because that's not what I want to do. And that's not what I need to do. What I need to do is something that is for the betterment of myself and my own independence, and recognizing that it doesn't make me an outlier. It just means that I have so much more to see and do in life. And that when I come home, those people will still be there if they choose to be there. And if they choose to not, then that's okay too. Because she got married in her mid 30s, which was unheard of for the 60s. Her daughter's in her mid 30s too, again, unheard of for the 60s. And then she divorced my granddad, um, which was again unheard of in the late 1900s. Um, and I think she did that, and now, like, as a way to just say, like, I can be independent and I can be my own person
Mm-hmm.
with or without a man. And I have things to accomplish without a man. And I think that that's influenced how I feel too. I have things to do on my own that I don't need other people to be there for. Then outside of that, I think the way she loved and influenced the way that I love. She was a very she loved everybody, and they were all welcome to the house. But she was a very tough love kind of woman. And I think that I'm pretty tough love kind of woman too, where I will listen to you, but I'm probably going to give you the no bullshit answer of what I think that would be best for you. And I expect you to also give me the no bullshit answer, because I think that she taught me that the more that you allow yourself the pity party or the like expectations that don't exist, the more that you live in, as we would say in the 2023, the delusion
The delusion.
that you live in. And so it's like she loved very fiercely and loudly, but she also was very much like, this is what you do, this is what will be done, you are doing this. And so I think that I take my love in that kind of way too, of like, realistically, what do you think is best for you? And if you can't answer that in like 5 seconds, then everybody knows the answer in the room. And so I think that that tough love has reverberated through generations since her. And I think that I've learned that too, that even in grief, like sometimes tough love is the answer. Sometimes it's, okay, you got to get out of bed. That's what she would tell you. So you got to get out of bed. You got to write that article. You got to go to work. Um, get a coffee on the way if that's what you need, but you have to do what you need to do. And so, yeah, slay.
Love.
Um, so another question I had is, what is an experience that you miss the most? And how do you think that I mean, you kind of talked about the coffee, but how do you think you honor that now?
Okay, I kind of have two answers for this one. Like one is like a short answer, but I guess I would say my mom used to like babysit a lot. And she loved babies, loved babies. And so she would ask to hold them, she would ask to babysit. She just wanted to be around little kids all the time. And so the way that I honor that kind of is like this sounds really weird. Like, yeah, I'll ask to hold your baby, or like I used to think it was really weird when she would like she would catch kids like staring at her and she'd go, "Hi," that sort of thing. I do that now. I'm
Yeah.
like, who the heck am I? And then I would say another thing is my mom used to dance a lot. She never danced professionally, but she loved like line dancing and just like have a fun time.
Yeah.
Um, I have two left feet. But and I just I can't dance. But when Ed Sheeran comes on or because that what she loved Ed Sheeran or there's something that like comes on that I'm like, ooh, Mischelle will get down to this, I do it. Or I just
Yeah.
kind of dance to myself or whatever. What about you?
Experience I miss is doing like mundane things with her. Um, and I would even consider that like when I was a kid and I would go to class with her, and I would just go through the day with her. I went to class, I participated in class. They all loved me, of course, duh. Or grocery shopping, or just like being a part of her day. And obviously, as she got older, moved to Atlanta, that kind of changed. Our mundane was we get our frappuccino and we'd all get our coffees from Starbucks and we would just go hang out. Whether or not she was like interacting with us or not, we would just be there with her. And we would all get that time to each other as well, to like see each other, talk to each other, whatever. And I think that I honor that now by I don't mind as much as I used to just being with other people while they do whatever they need to do. Of course, I'm going to join you on a Target run, but outside of that, like I don't mind the silence as much as I used to. Um, like if you're working on something and I have nothing to work on, that's fine. And then I also miss when she would read my articles. And so I made it a point that, because we've all been writers our entire lives, all of us in the family. And so I think once she passed, it was finding intentionality in my writing. Like, okay, I know I don't want to do this, but I need to do this and I need to do it well. And I need to do it in a way that, like, she would still find very eloquent, even if she had no fucking clue what I was writing about, aka wrestling. Um, just remembering that I love writing because I loved writing with her.
If you had one piece of advice for someone who has never like experienced grief before and are new to new to the game, what would that piece of advice be?
One day at a time. And don't be hard on yourself if some days are harder than the day before. Um, it's true that grief comes in waves, and you might stop yourself from laughing a few times or two because you remember that you're not supposed to be, you feel like you're not supposed to be happy. Um, and so recognizing that feeling and moving on from it, um, and you can process that at a later time. I think it's remembering that they would never want you to stop experiencing life because they are no longer here. But what would you say then? What would your advice be?
Okay, I would say, very similar to kind of what you were saying about like grief comes in waves. Um, I've been grieving for 2 years and I'd never really experienced death before, my mom passed and um one thing that someone told me that has kind of really stuck with me and then I was kind of like, oh no, like what the heck is that? It's
Yeah.
not gonna go away. And I was like, okay, well, is my world gonna be turned upside down forever? No, your
Mm.
world's not gonna be turned upside down forever. Um, Another thing, don't feel guilty for um anything that you might have missed or not been there for. Like, yeah, you're gonna have regrets, but don't feel guilty about them. And yeah, just one day at a time. It's okay to feel feelings. So that being said, Belle, like if you do need help, please make sure you reach out for help when it comes to the grieving process, and just know that it's okay to feel emotions. But um, for now, thank you for joining us, and we appreciate you listening into this very long conversation about grief and our experiences.
Yeah.
So,
Bye.
yeah. Cheers.
Cheers.